Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. One verb which you may not be familiar with is the verb to loot, to loot. And we're going to talk about this verb today because it seems that in London, there's an auction house. That's a place which sells things on behalf of somebody else, and it's been accused of selling looted goods. Now, let me explain first of all what the word loot means. To loot is when you steal something during a war or an act of violence. Okay? So you can imagine that during riots, during a war, shop windows get broken and there's people in the background, maybe who aren't fighting in the war, who jump into those shops and they steal things. That's called looting. The people involved, they are looting. And the items or the shops are being looted. L-O-O-T-E-D. Now, you can imagine that looting is very common these days because of the number of protests there are during the war. And I mean, during acts of violence, protests which happen all up and down the UK and around the world. I'm not sure exactly what it was like during the Second World War. I wasn't there. But certainly looting is a fact of life. And even when we see protests, such as the ones a few months ago here in the UK, looting was happening. People were jumping in and out of shops. Our weekly lesson this week is all about Christmas songs, and one of them is about colonialism. And there's a lot of protests about it. And that's why there's a connection. Of course, whenever there's a war, some kind of dictatorship or colonialist environment, no doubt, whenever there's any unrest, there's also looting. Now, there's a story today, Monday the 25th of November, which is all about some items that they found which they think are being looted. Now, there's an auctioneer called Bonhams. The auctioneer, you know, when you go to an auction, the man says, "Who will give me £100 for this item? This item is Roman, it's an old Roman coin. Who will give me £100? You, sir. Who will give me £200? £200? £200, who will give me 200? Yes, you, sir. And then the prices keep going up and you raise your hand and you bid. That's an auction. So it says here, the auction house, Bonhams, is facing an inquiry after a Roman antiquity, that just means a Roman thing, it's believed that it was looted from Turkey. The auction house Bonhams is facing calls to withdraw a Roman antiquity from sale as it faces claims that it was looted from Turkey. A 3rd century Roman silver plate decorated with a river god is expected to make between 20,000 and £30,000. However, a lecturer from the University of Cambridge has evidence that Turkish traffickers supplied it in 1992 to someone called Gianfranco Becina, who was convicted in Italy and Greece of dealing illegally in antiquities. Oh, interesting. Okay, so they're not saying this thing isn't real. They're saying that it can't be sold because it's a stolen item. it was looted. This man, Gianfranco Becina, his archive, which contained many stolen things, presumably, was seized by police. And he was prosecuted. They found documents which extended to thousands and thousands of things which he had trafficked or sold on. And this Roman plate is one of them. 1.6 million was paid, and they even have details of bank accounts and how it ended up in an auction house. So very interesting. And the story goes on here to say the Roman plate was offered for sale in July, and that's how the whole thing started. There's a beautiful picture of it here with a Roman god sitting in the water. In July, Bonhams announced it had sold the plate for around £74,000, more than double its estimates. And then the buyer, he missed the deadline to pay it, because you only have a certain amount of time to give the money over. And then it went back for resale. So it's been quite controversial. Yeah, and this man, this Italian or Greek man, it seems that he had been passing on lots and lots of items. So it's very interesting, very interesting. So the auction house has said, we have strict procedures in place to help us ensure we offer for sale objects that we are legally able to sell. We have had no communication from any law enforcement agency regarding these items. Okay, so very interesting. So it looks like, despite this news story, this item is still being sold. Francesca Hicken, the head of antiquities at Benham's auction house, said, it would be in our shared interest for the contents of the Becina archive to be made accessible to auction houses so that we know what's been stolen and what hasn't. Someone here is saying that the auction house had not conducted basic research, which would have involved checking with authorities on whether particular antiquities had been looted. Well, I suppose for auction houses, that's a big thing. There must be a way they can check to see if something is missing. But in response, as I just read to you, the auction house said, actually, we don't have any access to any archive about this particular thing being stolen. It would be helpful if you could share that with us. Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. So this person who was at the University of Cambridge, he's a lecturer, Dr. Christos Syrogiannis, apologies to anyone who knows how that name should be pronounced, he apparently raised the alarm. And he's involved in trafficking research for UNESCO as well as his lecturing job. A spokeswoman for the auction house said it had confirmed the provenance of the object in line with its procedures. But this man, this lecturer, he had suspicions all along that something wasn't right with it. Oh, very interesting. So a very complex story there, but it looks like the police aren't involved, but they do know that this plate has certainly been stolen, or at least looted. Looted, that's the word for today, looted. And this fits in nicely with my weekly lesson. There's a song I spoke about, which is apparently colonialists And that's the connection here. Whenever you have wars, dictatorships, colonialism, of course, there's going to be looting. Shops are going to be broken into and things stolen, just like this authentic Roman plate. Very interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. My grandmother used to have one of these plates, which was decorated in a kind of a Roman style. I mean, it wasn't authentic, it wasn't a real plate from Roman times. It was simply a plate with a Roman design. It was quite spooky, quite scary. I remember that plate. She had it sitting up on top of her table, and it was one of these things that you thought the eyes were following you. You know, it had a picture of a Greek god. I don't know who he was. He was an old guy with a beard, but he had very piercing eyes, and every time you walked past it, the eyes seemed to look at you. Very interesting. Very interesting. I'm sure it was placed on that table strategically to frighten the children because it was very curious. It was something that you would go back again and again to look at because it looked like it was living, like it was alive, you know. Anyway, that's our story for today, and the verb to loot, L-O-O-T. Looting, of course, is an illegal activity, and it's when you steal something during an act of violence, uprising, or war. There we are. See you. Bye.